I will show off these rather beautiful hand-drawn, hand-painted maps instead.
Oh, that is so good.
Wait,
They are
what?
beautiful. The
You missed
maps.
it.
Oh,
That one right there, that's Garugoma right there.
hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Infinite Tavern podcast. This, technically, is the very last interview of this season, not of the podcast. Um, we still have the actual play going on, and I hope you guys are listening to it because that's exclusively on audio. Uh, but to close out the interviews, we have this company. This game has been on my mind for a while. Oh, but before that, let me just say, I'm your favorite host, Amaan HK, and with me is the second favorite host,
Yeah,
Anurag.
some favorite host doesn't even introduce his co-host.
Dude, you're. I mean, do I really need to? Your second favorite, so it doesn't.
Sure. But how long did season 2 last, Aman?
It lasted a while, dude.
We
It la-
started, I think, in July was when
yes.
season 2 started.
Season 2 started and it has been going on for a while. I think season 3 will be even longer. We can't wait for that. But just to close off the season, we have two amazing guests for you. Two guests from the same place, from 3 Sales Studio, who are launching their ecological and exploration RPG, the EERPG, which is from TTRPG we went to EERPG. George, Jeremy, welcome to the Infinite Tavern podcast. How are you guys
Thanks
doing?
so much for having us, guys. I'm
thank
doing
you.
great. Thank you so much for having us. I mean, I feel like Amaan, me and you, we're like Bessie mates now. I'm basically the third
Mates.
host now. What with
Let's go for a
products
pint of
thought and
Guinness.
stuff. Exactly, yeah. With products of thought done, like we're old hands at this now.
Yeah, but I didn't get to meet Jeremy last time, and the work that you guys have done for Mappa Mundi, especially taking on such a massive project. It's not a small project. The way that you have opened up the world, it's quite a responsibility. But from what I've seen, everybody's excited about it, which is amazing. But keeping that aside, oh, my mic is so naughty today.
That does not sound right. That does not sound right.
I didn't know it was going to be this kind of podcast. I mean, I'm in for it, but
Even I didn't know it would be that kind of
well,
podcast.
well, here at the Infinite Tavern podcast, we're taking on a new direction. No, never mind. Not that.
No.
We're not. But keeping Mappa Mundi aside for just a minute, we want to know how you guys got a start in the TTRPG space, whether it was not professionally really, but where was the genesis of your relationship with TTRPGs?
Yeah, I can go first. How in depth do you want? Like very beginning
We're chill.
Genesis, or
In the beginning, there was nothing, and then suddenly there was light.
Oh,
and then there was
beginning.
TTRPGs.
the beginning there was nothing. So my backstory is unusual in that I only started playing and running TTRPGs pretty recently, actually, in 2017. So quite recent, but I was surrounded by tertiary tabletop stuff growing up. So I have an older brother who's about 8 years older than me, and he's a child of the 80s, and he grew up in the time when Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was at the original peak of popularity. As you can see on my shelf, we were talking about this before the stream started. I have this AD&D figure here that was originally supposed to be gifted to my brother, but never actually made its way to him. I rescued it from my parents' house. But anyway, my brother grew up watching the D&D cartoon.
Same.
Yeah,
I'm not that old, but
Yeah, he grew up. We had like a War Duke action figure and stuff like that he used to play with. And we owned a set of polyhedral dice, and there were a lot of other weird things that we just had in the house. Like I'm looking at these minis that I have on my desk. Another thing that I rescued from my parents' house. These are actually from Traveler, the original edition of Traveler, and we had these as well, unpainted. These were just things that my parents picked up from random cheap shops and kept for like inventory. We were talking about this growing up, like parents who buy random cheapo things for their children to recycle and reuse as gifts throughout the year. Like my mother especially did that a lot. So I grew up surrounded by these things, but I never actually played them until much later. The first TTRPG book that I owned was not D&D. Actually, it was the Robotech RPG by Palladium. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but I have it on my shelf also. It is, let's see if I can find it.
I think it's the first time I'm hearing of it.
Yeah, it's based on the Americanized version of Macross, the Japanese anime. Okay. So it's an extremely complicated role-playing game full of basically mechs and everything that is emblematic of the 80s in terms of design, like lots and lots of charts, lots and lots of tables, extremely modular detail. It makes Lancer look like 5th edition.
Just play,
yeah. I never actually played it. We had the book, and my brother and I used to read it and be like, "Oh, this is so cool," but we can't understand how any of this works. Yeah. So that was my experience with TTRPGs for a long time. And then as I got older, I experienced role-playing mechanics mainly through video games. I was really into Japanese role-playing games growing up. Then I got into computer role-playing games. And then eventually in 2017, I was living in Hong Kong, and I did have a friend at the time who wanted to get a D&D group running. And that's when I took the plunge. And I liked it so much that my friend somehow tricked me into becoming the DM, like after only a couple sessions, because he was like, "Oh, Jeremy is really into this, really likes this. Well, I'm going to get a chance to play." And then he convinced me to become the DM. And at the time I was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to take this responsibility so seriously. I won't fail you." And then I just became the DM, which is a dirty trick. And then since then I've just become a game master for various systems. And I got my start fully writing and contributing to tabletop games around 2020, actually, which is when I started freelance writing in the industry. I have a writing background. I studied journalism, and so I was already writing for news media websites, but I made connections to the tabletop industry, started writing some articles for D&D Beyond, and that led to other freelance writing jobs for like Pathfinder, various indie properties, and then I hooked up with George for 3 Sail Studios. But that's really condensing a very long story into a short summary.
Would you consider yourself a forever DM?
Now I certainly am. Yes,
Yes.
Don't really get a chance to play anything anymore. I think, the main exception is I am in a Fabula Ultima game. If you haven't played Fabula Ultima, you should check it out.
Which I'm incredibly jealous about. I introduced Jeremy to Fabula Ultima, and then he was like, "Oh, that sounds really cool." And then like 2 weeks later, he was in a group, and I was like, this is terrible.
It was a very rare occurrence, but the group also is a victim of scheduling. Like we haven't met for 2.5 months, so we're trying to get it back together, but it's not as frequent as I would like. So yes, I would consider myself a forever DM. George and I, at the last convention we were at, we were talking about, games that we would love to play. And we were like, both of us would love to play RuneQuest, but we don't want to run it for someone. We just like to play it.
We need to trick someone into running it for us.
Yeah.
Fair enough. George, what about you, though?
So like Jeremy, I didn't start with D&D, which I think makes, as a pair, I think that makes us pretty rare. Like as a design team, like it makes us pretty rare. Like I got my first start in tabletop RPGs with Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition. I'm pretty sure it was maybe it was 3rd edition. I can't remember. It was 2nd or 3rd edition, but it was back in like the mid 2000s. So I was like 14, 15, so 2004, 2005. That's how I got started. I didn't actually play D&D for the first time until I was like nearly 30. I played D&D for the first time in like 2018 during my PhD. We'd just come off, I was running like a One Ring campaign, which I really enjoyed, and one of the people at the table was like, oh, I've never played D&D, can we give it a try? So I ended up running it. And like it's one of those games where like it's for what it is, great, it's really good. I think because I didn't come to it first, it's never held that kind of like it's never been the pinnacle of things for me. It's always actually been because I always had other things to compare it to. And as you and I have established before, Amaan, I'm not really a big D20 fan. I came to D&D pretty late, but not just late in terms of my age, but also in terms of my TTRPG journey. I had a lot to do before then. And in terms of how Jeremy and I got started working together, I started 3 Cell Studios originally as I was designing a miniature war game called Margrave, and one of the factions was based on early Qing Dynasty China, and I had worked with Daniel Kwan from the Asians Represent podcast, who's also a cultural consultant. I worked with him on the cultural consultation for the faction, and I needed some writing doing. Daniel said he was too busy to do it, and like it's serendipitously, he was like, I've got someone for you though. So me and Jeremy started working together on that. Jeremy did some brilliant writing for it, and then by the time Jeremy was getting ready to relocate from the US to the UK, I had the concept and idea for Mappa ready for about 3 or 4 months. And I knew I wanted a design partner. Like when I'd been working on the war game, it was a very isolating experience. And I knew I wanted someone to work with. Obviously, I was already working with Joel, our artist, at that point, but so I wanted someone to work with on the design side of things. And me and Jeremy had worked really well together. I was a big fan of Jeremy. Jeremy's one of my best friends, but at this point, Jeremy was someone I was just a fan of and someone who I thought we worked really well together. And I kind of made the offer to him. And I think Jeremy described it on a podcast, on an Asians Represent podcast, when asked how he had pitched for work. Was like, actually, like, and this made him sound very, very important, is that actually I had a job pitched to me, which was obviously the 3 Sales job. I wanted Jeremy to come on as a developer, as an editor, and as a co-writer, to work with me on stuff. And now here we are, 14, 15, 16 months later, something like that, with Mappa Mundi, all like, as of the day we're recording, I think we're like 17, 18 days out now from launching our first game, which is now fully finished. Like I put the final manuscript together in a Google document the other day. It's 82,000 words. Oh, which, incidentally, that's only 500 words fewer than my PhD thesis. So like I put it all together the other day, and like we've managed to pull this off. We only started work on it, like pen to paper work, in October of 2023.
I think so I moved to the UK in late July 2023. My wife is British, and I met her in America, but we moved to the UK in 2023. So I think in August, George approached me about working on Mappa Mundi, and there was like a rough concept document. And then I late August and I think September, actually, we had a couple meetings where we started hashing out the mechanics and talking to each other and trying to figure out the concept of the game. So I think there was conceptual work done late 2023. I know I started also writing a concept document around then. I started writing Root and Branch, the very basics of Root and Branch, which is our introductory adventure in the pre-release guide of Mappa Mundi. I started writing that in late 2023, but it definitely like the core work was all done in 2024. I would say that the whole game, making it from start to finish, probably has been a little over 1.5 years at this point. By the time it releases, it will probably be an almost 2-year project. It is a tremendous amount of work to have done in 2 years, especially for 2 guys like us who have other jobs and have been really putting a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into getting this out. So it's very long. It's very long. I'm amazed we've done it.
we've done it to ourselves as well, because I mean, right from the start, I pitched to Jeremy, and obviously there's our third member, Joel. I pitched to the both of them. I was like, if we're going to launch this game on Kickstarter, we're going to launch it when it's finished. We're not going to launch it when it's halfway done. And so, my desire not to potentially run the risk of ruining our reputation by not being able to deliver on time has meant that we've all, we've been burning the candle at both ends, and then taking a blowtorch to it as well to make sure we get everything done in time. But the final product is looking so good. Like, we're all really, really proud of where we're at with it. But that's how we ended up working together, and long may it continue, because the three of us now own the company together.
Yeah, it's been an awful lot of work. I definitely, it's not something that I would have been able to do without George, and George, I don't think you necessarily would have been able to do it without me, or definitely Joel. Like, Joel's contributions, he's not here. He doesn't do podcasts. He doesn't do conventions. He just draws, and he draws very well. His contributions cannot be overstated, because his art is what attracts people to the product, not so much my writing or George's design. It's the art, and I think the interplay between the three of us is what has made this project come to. I guess it's coming to the finish line now. I mean, there's still some little bits and bobs to do, but it's coming to the finish line now. And, for someone like me, and I don't know if you're the same, George, like, I've started a lot of projects over the course of my life that have been unfinished, and that has been something that I've grappled with. It is very gratifying to see something like this materialize and get very close to the finish line.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, ADHD, mate. I start 10,000 things a week. Very few of them get finished. But this one, I'm very, very proud of what the three of us have managed to achieve with it.
So the artwork, the main artwork for Mappa Mundi that we see on the cover, that's been done by Joel?
Yeah, so Joel has done every single piece of artwork in the book. Ooh. Every single piece.
Amazing.
And he's done, that's not just that's all of the cards as well. So Joel has done an incredible amount of work. So Joel has done 36 landscape cards. He's doing 30 monster cards. He's drawing 30 full-size monsters for the book, 10 creatures, 10 regional guide landscape pieces, and all the interstitial artwork, of which there are about 51, I think. So Joel has done, while Jeremy and I have collectively, in terms of final count, we've written way more than this, but in terms of final count, 81,000, 82,000 words, and Jeremy's edited it all, gone through multiple editing passes, and I've done all the layout and stuff. Joel has done an inordinate amount of work as well, that's the only thing that's currently outstanding. The last artwork deadline is the day the Kickstarter finishes. Yeah. And then, assuming we fund, we literally go to print the next day. So...
God, that he's the MVP, because I would say
he really is.
for a lot of Kickstarters or even TTRPG books, the art can really drive people's attraction to a particular project. And I got to see some of the artwork, which is chef's kiss. It's so good, especially for the monsters for Garagoma, which especially I'm forgetting the name, the tree
the Mande Barum.
Yeah,
the Mande Barum.
Oh my god,
he's my favorite.
So good.
So I mean, the way that I've always looked at things, and this was true when I was designing a miniature game. It's just as true with TTRPGs, and it very much informed my approach to how we do our convention appearances as well. With a TTRPG, and this is me with my kind of publisher hat on, when you're selling a TTRPG, the first thing that people are buying is the artwork. The second thing that they're buying is the concept. The third thing that they're buying is the game. And so the artwork has to be, all three of those things have to be good, right? But actually, if you're just interested in selling it and not in people enjoying it, then just the artwork and the concept have to be good. But if you actually then want people to enjoy it as well, the game needs to be really good as well. But people aren't buying a set of mechanics, right? They're buying an idea, and that idea is brought to life through the artwork. So when we go to conventions, I make sure that we have 4 meter wide banner, Jeremy? It's 4 meters wide. It's nearly 3 meters tall of that Mappa Mundi cover artwork. And you just see people walking past it being like, wow, what is that? And so like we couldn't do what we do without Joel. And I've known Joel for years. He's up here in Manchester where I am, whereas Jeremy's down in London. And I knew right from the start that I wanted to work with Joel, forever. We are incredibly rare, especially for a studio of our size, to have a full-time artist. Like even the big studios don't really have full-timers.
Yeah.
There is I know that like Paizo, they have one full-time artist, and they make D&D's main competitor. They have one full-time concept artist, and they're a company of about 80 something people, which is actually pretty small, all things considered. Once again, this is not a big industry. An 80-person company is considered small in the grand scheme of things. But within the scope of TTRPGs, that is a big thing.
Huge.
They have one concept artist. So we are extraordinarily lucky to have 3 people, and then one guy just does all the art, which is why.
But it's been a conscious choice, right? Yeah. It was a conscious choice for us to do that because Joel deserves. I'm going to say this. I don't know how well received this will be, but I'm going to say I genuinely think Joel is one of the best artists working in the TTRPG space. I legitimately
I would second that. I would second that.
Okay, well that's good. I and Joel is used to me hyping him up because he's the shyest, most nervous, sweet guy in the world. But I do genuinely believe that he is up there among the very best of artists in the community, and we are incredibly lucky. I'm incredibly lucky. Jeremy and I are incredibly lucky to know him and be friends with him, let alone to be able to work with him like we do. And my recognition, I think I might have said this on Products of Thought, right? But in addition to the studio, I work 2 other jobs. And one of those jobs is just to pay Joel. He needs to be paid. He can't do what Jeremy and I do, which is have other jobs and do what he does. So I work a second job to make sure he gets paid because he deserves that security. And all artists, all of us in the TTRPG space deserve that kind of security. Unfortunately, it's not a reality for most of us, but I'm in a position to do that for Joel, and I'd be stupid not to because he's worth every penny and more.
Yeah, I agree. It's rare to. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. I'm just saying, paying. With the advent of all of the shitty things that are going on with the world, especially with generative AI, I had a argument with someone about it recently, employing artists. I feel not really responsibility, but it's the least we can do because they have given so many. Being a amateurish artist myself, having given so many hours just to perfect the craft. The artist deserves some props, and Joel certainly does. It's top notch. Definitely agree to one of the best TTRPG artists.
And you wait as well. You wait until our next game starts, and you'll see Joel's art style completely change, and he'll be just as good in this new art style. When I was doing Margrave, the war game, Joel was my artist on that, and I had 3 factions. I had a Catholic Inquisition faction, I had an ancient Greek faction, and I had a Qing Dynasty China faction, all with 3. So I said to Joel, I was like, right, I need 3 big pieces. One of them needs to be stained glass art, one of them needs to be Greek pottery style, and one of them needs to be Chinese ink and chalk drawings. He went away for a month, came back with 3 completely unique pieces. And he was like, are these good enough? And I was like, oh my God.
He's very diverse in his skill set.
Yeah,
very
very
diverse.
He's just incredible. He's incredible. So you'll see his art style change completely with our next project, and he will be just as good at doing all 3 of them. So yeah, he's worth every single penny.
His art style has actually changed over the course of Mappa Mundi a little bit. If you look at look at the cover art, which is already amazing, and if you look at some of the other illustrations that we've got from him, which are still under wraps, the detail and sort of the confidence with the material has increased over the course of the year, which is really wonderful to see.
And also, so I just wanted to know, what does Mappa Mundi mean, the term?
Mappa Mundi means a Mappa Mundi is a world map. So Mappa is map, Mundi is world. To pluralize it, it's Mappe Mundi. So it's Mundi stays the same, world stays the same, but maps becomes Mappa, becomes Mappa with an AE on the end.
What language is this again?
Latin.
I think it's Latin. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is here in the UK. So these are real things. Mappa Mundi are real things. They're real medieval maps of the world. There is one here in the UK. It's called the Hereford Mappa Mundi. It's the largest surviving one in the world, and it's held in Hereford Cathedral. And I did try and get in contact with them to say, can I come down and do some promotional filming? But they said no. But I'm trying. I'm not to be deterred. I'm still trying. But yeah, so they were normally circular. The Hereford one it's huge. It's genuinely huge. And it's kept in this chained library, like it's literally chained into the library. But yeah, so they were kind of religious, geographical, cosmological conceptions of the world, often then with the sky and space and heaven around the sides of it, and they were always centered. They were always centered on Jerusalem. So the conception at the time was that Jerusalem was at the center of the world, and so they're always kind of centered around Jerusalem. But yeah, you can look the Hereford Mappa Mundi up online, and it's really something to see.
I mean, I think if
you go on.
Oh yeah, I was just saying if you Google Mappa Mundi, that's probably the first thing that will come up because
the Hereford Mappa Mundi.
Our game is not that high up in search term optimization just yet, but maybe one day. The day that happens will be amazing. But yeah, you can Google it, and it's like George said, a circular map of the world. It's got everything from Western Europe to Southeast Asia on there.
An ancient map locked away in a chained library somewhere.
It sounds very role playing already. Right?
Also, with the heavens and the hells and everything around the world, it's already
it's almost like the game concept wrote itself.
Just sounds like the plot of National Treasure to me. The Nicolas Cage movie.
Oh yeah, fair enough.
So yeah, I also wanted to check. So I've gone through your website, and you made this whole disclaimer about generative AI.
Yeah, we don't use generative AI ever. As far as I'm aware, I don't use it in any aspect of my life. I think I've uninstalled it from as much as possible. It's uninstalled from my phone, my tablet, my laptop. I just when anything comes, I've put blocks on my computer so that Google doesn't offer me its in inverted commas AI overview, which is just stolen from the first page anyway. I just anywhere that I see it, I purge it from my devices. I don't use AI for primarily for the same reason that I don't eat meat, which is environmental ethics.
I get it.
And other people eat meat, and that's fine. People can do what they choose to do with it. But I don't use it primarily for its. There's the kind of intellectual property stuff as well, which is very, very important, and I'm not trying to diminish that. But actually, far more kind of immediately impactful is the water and energy usage that comes with it. So,
true.
I've purged it as much as possible.
In like the limited number of streams that I've done, like online on Twitch. I make sure to tell my players, do not use AI images. We'll credit the player artists. We can, ask the artist for permissions. Like we can do what, all that is needed, but let's not go with the AI stuff.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's absolutely the right take to make on it.
And I think when generative AI was just like coming through, like we had like Midjourney and everything coming through, I think I was not ill-informed. I was like not like totally in the know of what actually it was. So like I was kind of, I had become like sort of an apologist for generative AI. But like when I actually saw like, oh my God, like there is like actual like intellectual property theft going on, and plus all the environmental things going on. I mean, people are like comparing it to how the camera was developed, and people thought like the painting jobs will all be gone. I'm like, it's not really the same.
But it's not true. It's just it's a completely specious argument, right? When the camera was invented, the camera wasn't just it wasn't reproducing people's paintings. That's not the way that it works. But it's we made a statement about it on our website that we don't use it for any purpose at any time. And we won't be. So there was one point I was offered some freelance work by a company who were using AI, and I was like, no, I can't take the work. I can't be associated with it. Even though it's not my project, I cannot. It wasn't even the stuff that I was working on or would have been working on for them. And I was like, no, I can't. I can't do it. If you're using it in any part of your process, I can't be involved with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the tabletop industry, it's the impact that generative AI has on this very small industry is a bit more pointed than it isn't. I mean, it has an impact on all industries, but in the tabletop industry, it's particularly pointed because it's so small, and this is a business of games that are developed through human creativity, whether that's a game master running a campaign, whether that's someone like Joel drawing art, whether that's someone like me, or George editing and writing. And there's a lot of, I've had debates with this over people and looked at the arguments both for and against. There's a lot of people saying that oh, AI usage helps me get out this product, or run better campaigns as a game master, all these sorts of endless circles of discourse. But ultimately, I think the games that we make are rooted in the real world, and our motto is the real world done fantastically. And I think part of that being rooted in the real world ethos is rooted in the real work of creators. So people like Joel that draw things, people like me who edits and writes, people like George that does design work. And it would be, it would go against that motto to churn out an AI generated image, however you feel about the ethics of it. So in my day job, I'm associated with the video game industry in my day job, and AI is everywhere. In video games now, whether it's coding or whether it's conceptual development, even companies that say that they aren't using generative AI, I strongly believe it's kind of happening under the surface. So I've had to learn about it in my day job. I think how it develops in the world remains to be seen, but I do think it's especially important for a company like 3 Sales Studios to promote the work of actual human beings and to stay true to that mission statement, because and also it gets the if we really want to take another argument, generative AI is not really capable of producing anything close to what Joel can make now. The best generative images, and I've done experiments with this in the past. I'm probably less of a hardliner in George in that I have done some experiments with generative AI art in the past, but the best images are not equivalent to what an actual artist with technique and so much human experience can put into their work. Some people say that AI will get to that level. I don't necessarily think that's the case, and I think there's an argument to say that hey, a human touch is what's needed, and people more than anything else want a human touch when it comes to their entertainment, and I think that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of the work. There is power in the work, right? There's power in the games that we produce and the art that we produce. And I say that at all levels of the TTRPG space, from someone in their room making notes for their upcoming campaign or developing their character, all the way through to us as designers and publishers. There is power in that work, and the work is what makes things important. It's not the outcome. If you haven't put the work in, and it boils down as a consumer and as a publisher, because obviously, beyond my taking my designer hat off and putting my publisher hat on, I can't expect anyone to be bothered to play my game if I couldn't be bothered to actually design it. Typing a prompt in, I've not done the work. I've not crafted it and honed it, and we haven't worked on it collaboratively. There's no collaboration in the AI space as well, which I think is what makes Mappa Mundi and makes our upcoming games, our future games as well, so much as good as we think they are. At least it comes from that collaborative process, and you can't collaborate with AI. It's theft. It's not collaboration. So yeah, we're Jeremy saying he's not as hardline as me. I think that's basically the story of my life. Is people are always saying, "Well, I'm not quite as hardline as George is," but that's normally the way.
Well, I often, I mean, I don't like telling people. I have an aversion to telling people what they can and can't do because I don't like it when people tell me what they can and can't do. So I'm never going to be someone who says like you can't, you can't mess around with AI in your private time to see what it's capable of, because I've done that. I'm not gonna tell you that you can't as a GM that you can't use AI generated images in your home game. I've chosen not to in my games. I made that conscious decision because I thought about it, but I was like, I'd rather not. I needed an image of a frog dragon for a game that I was running, and I couldn't find an image of a frog that looked like a dragon. I was like, I could generate this, but I ended up looking a little harder, and I found an image that an artist made of a frog that looked like a dragon. So I think if you look hard enough, there are ways to get around it, and it's a conscious decision for everyone. Everyone has their own story to tell and their own style to tell to define, and their own, I guess, personal code of ethics when it comes to how they want to approach these things. I think as a studio, it's that statement on our website is there to let you know where the studio stands, and I think it's a good thing that George wrote that on the website. It's something that we're trying to abide by. I think when dealing with generative AI, considering the impact it has on the planet, you can't just take it for gospel. Like, no, you can't. And you're going to have to bring humans in anyway. And then you come to the argument, well, why aren't you just using humans for this in the first place?
Just use the humans to start with, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's high. I've talked about people with this all the time. George, living here in London, Keir Starmer has said he's going to make London to the AI capital of the world. I think it's hilarious.
I'm fully aware.
That's our prime minister. And he's talking about how AI is going to revitalize the economy. And he says many things, some of which he might not know what they entirely mean. But it's like, how is this going to happen? Like, what's actually going to be going on?
He just uses it as a blanket term.
Of course,
AI is a blanket term now. It's
I've seen I've seen a lot of companies, a lot of tech companies, since I work in the tech. I've seen a lot of tech companies say that they're using AI, state-of-the-art AI technologies, but they don't even specify what they're doing with that.
This is what I'm talking about with video games. AI is everywhere in video games. It's being used in all your things. Like, it's under the surface, for better or for worse. I think it's a good idea if people put some checks and balances on it in the TTRPG space, because once again, this is a space so heavily rooted in the analog works of individual creators. Video games, unfortunately, it's rampant at this point, and I think there will be a dialing back, but at the moment, I totally understand what you're saying with just code words being like, we used AI generated levels. No, that's procedural generation. That's not like that's not AI.
Leaving AI and coming back into the world of TTRPGs. So I just want to know what your world is like. So what the world that is Mappa Mundi is set in. So what is it like?
It's very, very similar to our world, really. It was originally kind of my design philosophy, and then it accidentally became the company motto, which is, as Jeremy said earlier on, the real world done fantastically. So all of my designs, all of my concepts are rooted in real world, in our world. Or very, very, very closely parallel versions of our own world. So geographically, the world of Ecumeni, which Mappa Mundi takes place in, is almost identical to real world geography. Almost. The only real difference. The only real difference is the animal life, and that takes the form primarily. Well, the difference takes the form primarily of monsters, which are kind of much rarer. There's normally only one or two of them, or a single herd, like a single population of them. And then we have creatures as well, which creatures are more common, more popular. They contain like real world animals. So we've got like pheasants and boar and tigers. But then we also have 8 varus, which are cockerels that their tails are on fire. We also have, I'm trying to think of, my mind's gone blank. Oh, we've got Jeremy, we've got your Daigong.
You guys saw Shang-Chi, the Marvel movie? If you know, you remember, there's one part where they're in China. There's like a mythological floating fluff ball that's like faceless and it has wings. It's called a dijiang in Mandarin Chinese, or we're using the Cantonese name for it in the game, Daigong. So it's like a spirit, like a fluffy spirit with wings that doesn't have a face, and we've re-envisioned it in our game as one of the creatures that represent our China analog.
And in that case, they're kind of pets, right?
Yeah,
the Daigong are kind of pets. So that's the real that's the major difference is the animal life and some of the plant life as well. But the world, the setting, the time period that Mappa Mundi is set in is a kind of pan-global medieval period. Okay. So it's kind of equivalent time periods. It's not one flat time period because cultures go through this kind of, I'm not sure we'd call it medieval everywhere, but they go through kind of analogous states of cultural development at different time points. And so we've kind of flattened that out and taken different time periods from different kind of real world regions and kind of set that across the board. And so it's a world that is coming out of 100 years of ecological catastrophe, huge storms that have basically divided all the continents from one another, and then also the regions within those continents from one another. And so these storms are called the flux, and the flux is now finally, when the game starts, the flux is finally coming to an end, or seems to be coming to an end. Okay. It's certainly abated at the very least. And travel has now become possible again, and the role that the players take on is the role of chroniclers who are going out into this world in an attempt to reconnect it and to learn about what it's like now after 100 years of this ecological catastrophe.
And so, I've also gone through some a bit whatever is available on the website. So I just another question. So I've seen that the term fate has been humanized a little bit.
Yeah, so we refer to fate as she quite frequently, but Jeremy's probably best placed to answer this, because one of the things we've done in writing these 10 different regions is to make sure they are not all identical. They're not all kind of just analogues of Western Europe. So Jeremy took the lead on kind of how fate is the kind of prime mover in this world, but every region has different conceptions of what she looks like, it looks like, he looks like, they look like.
Yeah.
So Jeremy really took the lead on
this.
I
think we wanted to have a world that is similar to real world history, and that places have their own different conceptions of the same concept. A dragon looks different in many different cultures, and so almost every region of our game has some sort of idea that's analogous with the concept of fate, whether that's a divine presence, whether that's like the image of a goddess sitting at a loom, like weaving threads of fate, or in the case of our China analog, fate is sort of represented by 3 divine dragons that came and molded the world out of primordial clay. So all of our regional guides, once again, 10 different regions in the book, they have something in there linking the idea of fate with this idea of a creation myth. And
one of my favorites actually is Garagoma. So Garagoma is our version of South Asia.
Yeah, not to give too much away, but there is some influence taken from real world mythology in here. But our vision of fate in Garagoma is that there is a crow, a divine crow, that was flying through a primordial world, and then saw a flower growing from a mountain in the middle of this vast ocean, and pulled that flower up with its beak, and then that also pulled up the world around it. And so we did a lot of research into the various creation myths of cultures and tried to channel that into the game, always focusing on when we could find it, underrepresented cultures and stories of indigenous people, and pulling a lot of inspiration from that. So I think if you're interested in a lot of I don't remember the term for it. There's a formal term for like the study of creation myths, but if you're interested in stories of how the world came to be, you'll find a lot to enjoy when you read our setting guides.
Oh yeah, that sounds, the creation myth. Those sound actually like really interesting.
We got so into it that actually one of the regions that I wrote, Tir Hakim, has the center of Tir Hakim is the House of Knowledge. So it's like the foremost higher education institution in the continent that we're covering, and the central object of study there is the study of origins. So they collect creation myths and stuff. So again, I wanted to kind of have a little bit of meta work at play there, in terms of like, we have all these creation myths, and then here's this place that collects creation myths and studies them to try and get to the root of the origins of the world.
Tir Hakim, that's the Middle East, North Africa.
Yeah, so Tir Hakim stretches from what would be real world Turkey down to the Arabian Peninsula, and then next door to it is Aishamet, which is North Africa.
Tir Hakim is basically the Arabian equivalent, but there's a lot of general lore there inspired by Islamic mythology, I think.
Yeah, I dove really heavily into Sufism and Kurdish kind of religious thought to inspire the origins of Tir Hakim, and then also built in some kind of Arabian cosmology in there as well.
Yeah,
I love that. I try to like, again, being a Muslim, like, I, even with all of my games, I try to incorporate that part of my culture, even though like I'm Indian, I'm not Arabian, but still all of that collective sort of mythology that we all share. Like, I try to incorporate it as much as I can. And I love that you use the word Hakim.
So Jeremy can take credit for, I'm really bad at naming things, and so I said to Jeremy, I was like, right, here are these 10 regions, go out and name them all. So Jeremy normally took a syllable from one of the monsters that are commonly associated with that region, and then an indicative kind of word, phrase, or syllable from one of the languages that come from that region. And so Tir Hakim is Tiamat, who's one of the monsters in that region.
And the word Hakim, well. So I wanted to find things that evoked a sense of place. Like, you see the word Tir Hakim, and it's a made-up word, but you kind of know. You're like, Also with like Mappa Mundi, a lot of people don't know Latin, don't know what Mappa Mundi is. Previously discussed.
Even I didn't know. Like, I had to Google it. Like,
but you sort of know. You're like, the word map is there, Mappa Mundi. You can kind of tell, and I think, for all of the names in our game, I wanted to bring forth that sense of, you kind of know what this is. It evokes a certain place, a certain culture. That's the name of our region. That's the name of our world.
That's fair. So, like, who were all like the cultural consultants that you guys worked with when you were, working on the origins of the world? I know, Jeremy, you were technically a kind of a cultural consultant for, like, I think the more on the East Asian side.
I wrote. We George and I split up the writing of the setting guides. So I wrote Zomong, which is sort of our China equivalent.
Okay.
And went kind of from China. I went westward, and George sort of took some of our European nations and then went south to Northern Africa and to the Arabian Peninsula. So we sort of covered, we started at different directions of the map and sort of converged in the middle, with the exception of Barbecia, which was our Western fantasy analog. That's the closest kingdom we have to, it's one of the only kingdoms we have, actually, but it's the closest region we have to a traditional TTRPG in terms of Western fantasy setting, and that is the one.
And it's the equivalent of kind of medieval France. Where, like, if we're going to do this is where we're going to do it.
We chose not to make it sort of a quasi-Britain, which is what you often see in a lot of games. We specifically sort of France to be a little different, and that was the one featured in our pre-release guide. It's the one that I think we chose to give a large audience an anchor point. For better or for worse, a lot of people in TTRPGs, they want to be in like a forest environment with like a castle in the background, because that's very familiar. And I think we decided that if we're going to do that, we're going to put our own spin on it. So I do think Barbecia is quite interesting as a region, despite being familiar. In terms of cultural consultants, I think we tried to choose. We made an effort to select cultural consultants for the regions that have been, I think, most misrepresented in tabletop role-playing games. This includes regions like China, like, Arabia, like Northern Africa, like Vietnam. Like one of the regions is vaguely based off of Southeast Asia and Vietnam. So that process was identifying people on social media who work in the tabletop space who had experience writing in other settings that are also influenced by these regions. And I was fortunate enough to have worked on the Pathfinder Tianxia books, which is their Asia equivalent.
Amazing.
And so I knew a lot of people who had intimate experience writing about like China, Japan, Korea. Mongolia was tricky. I think you brought this up in your last interview.
That was very, very difficult.
Mongolia was hard. There aren't that many people of actual Mongolian descent or living in Mongolia who are involved in the tabletop scene. I did find an amazing consultant who is not Mongolian heritage but lives there, and she is the one that took over
and speaks Mongolian, speaks Tibetan.
Yeah, so she was an amazing find, very rare find. Other folks, I mean, you guys discussed this a little bit in your last podcast.
Yeah.
But like for India, I mean, Bashir Grouse, I'll just name him. Like he was our Indian cultural consultant, and he did an amazing job helping us to identify a lot of the holes in the world building there, telling us that our initial draft of Garugoma, our Indian region, was not.
It was too culturally homogenous.
It was culturally homogenous in the sense that it just was not quite there in terms of grasping the full diversity of India. For better or for worse, because I was the one who wrote it, and I am not of Indian descent myself. A lot of those, I think, subconscious biases probably snuck into the writing. Also, because, and this is advice for anyone working on their own tabletop project and world building, Garugoma, unfortunately, just happened to be the last region that I wrote after having written so much other stuff. And I was, and unfortunately, some of those biases crept in because I was so tired from writing so much lore that they just snuck in there, which goes to say it's good to have a series of checks and balances, which is what cultural consultants are. They are there to help you when those subconscious biases creep in, because it can happen to anyone. It can happen to people of color who are writing settings for video game for tabletop games, and it can happen to even someone with the best of intentions who has done a lot of research. So we're very lucky that Bashir was there to kind of say, "Hey, you gotta work on these bits and bobs." And but Bashir was harsh. Like, he let us know what we needed to do. And the first time I read it, I was like, "Oh man, like, oh no."
It was firm. I remember the email came through. I was laying in bed. It must have been about 10:30, something like that. The email came through, and I was like, "Oh, I'll have a quick look at that." And I was like, oh, okay. He's being very direct, which I appreciate. But I was like, I'm just going to let Jeremy know just in case he's seen this as well. But like I said, when we were talking about Amaan, when we were talking about this on Products of Thought, Garugoma was easily the most difficult cultural consultation process we went through, but I think was easily the most valuable.
Yeah, definitely.
Because the version of Garugoma now is so much richer and so much deeper than what it was before, and opens up all these new avenues for storytelling that weren't there before. And it's like I think I said on Products of Thought, it's like what we are trying to do is provide players with a cup that's a quarter full, and we want you to fill the rest of the cup up with your stories.
Yeah. I think going back to what we were talking about, the human touch before, like that is why a human touch is needed. You need a person whose lived experience resonates with this material. You need a person to look at it and say, hey, you can perhaps improve on this. So shout out to Bashir for being the honest voice that we needed at that moment in time, because it's extremely valuable.
I think there's also an interesting point about with Bashir was the person we chose, and if I'm not wrong, I think Amaan, we spoke about this before. Bashir, like you, is Muslim, right? And so I think that was a really valuable thing to do, because the Western biases that we have about India look at India as largely Hindu homogenous. And that had definitely come into that original conception of Garugoma. And Bashir was like, no. Like, that kind of, like, it's weird of having a kind of, I'm trying to think of what the word was, like a different perspective from within a region.
Yeah,
that can be from a minority perspective within a region, I think was very helpful.
I also think it's just vitally important to have someone who's familiar with that region come in and give you a perspective that is not that outsider's perspective. Like you want somebody who is not an outsider to be able to process this material, so that people who are not outsiders, when they play the game, will feel that it's authentic, will feel that it's lived in. So I think our version of Garogoma that we ended up with is much better than what I had initially produced. I think there's still room for improvement and for future Mappa expansions, for future Mappa adventures. Like I would love to get more into the weeds, develop it more. Ideally, we want Mappa to be a success, so that when we're developing the regions of our world more, the new lore can be written by folks of that culture, which was just something we didn't have the monetary resources to do that. With this being our first project, it is certainly a priority moving forward, and definitely something that we're making plans to make a reality.
I mean, I have no words. This is such a good note to end this on, because again, cannot wait to actually run this game. I know you have a actual play with Euphoria coming out, which I cannot wait to listen to. It's
going to be very, very good.
I'm so excited.
Very good.
I'm so excited to listen to that, watch that, whichever form it's coming out in. And lastly, to those who are listening or watching, there are some really good episodes about Mappa Mundi that you can go watch and listen to, including mine at Products of Thought, as well as Jala Chan. I mean, that episode was really, really informative, and it was really fun to listen to. Lastly, George and Jeremy, would you like to plug in 3 Sales and Mappa Mundi and the Kickstarter?
Yeah, 100%. So thank you, everyone. Thank you guys for having us. As always, we're very, very grateful. Thank you to everyone who's listening. Mappa Mundi launches on Kickstarter on February the 4th, which is very, very close now. The book will be, the writing and the layout is all done. We're just plugging in the final bits of artwork over the course of the Kickstarter. If we fund, which we very much hope we will be going to print the very next day. Like I've already lined the manufacturing up. We'll be going to print the very next day, hoping to have books in people's hands by the summer. We will be shipping worldwide. It's going to be expensive to ship to India, but it's always possible. And PDFs have free shipping, obviously, because they just turn up in your email. There are PDFs.
Ding, ding.
But yeah, you can find, if you just type in Mappa Mundi, which is MAPPA space MUNDI, and then Kickstarter, you'll find our Kickstarter. You can go follow the page there, and you can be there when we launch day one. And we're really looking forward to having you with us and giving you this world to go out and play in and to complete yourselves.
Yep, and just Google or go on YouTube or Spotify, search Mappa Mundi RPG, and you'll find all the relevant results, all the new videos, old videos talking about the mechanics, how to play, etc. It's a really, really cool game, really cool system. Cannot wait for that. Just to close it all off, if you are watching this on YouTube, consider subscribing, liking, commenting. Please, make this, give us the push, not just for us, but for Mappa Mundi as well. And if you are on Spotify, if you're listening on Spotify, hey, give us a follow. Please give us a good rating. I mean, we are all doing this to help
them. And for all our listeners and viewers, Season 2 was absolutely amazing. A lot of fun, so many awesome episodes, the great awards, actually winning the great awards. And
winning the great awards.
It's been a heck of a journey. And
dude, do you realize for us date right now, it's 17 January, and that's the date we released the first
Today
episode
marks
last year.
1 year of Infinite Tavern, the day we are recording. And wow, it has been a hell of a journey, and we are. Thank you.
Congratulations, guys! That is an amazing achievement.
And we will be coming back for more.
Thank you.
Season 3 is going to be starting soon, and we have a very good scheme up our sleeves. Should we tell that, Aman? Should we tell them or?
We do. No, they'll find out soon enough.
All right.
They'll find out soon enough. And we have like an amazing lineup of guests. And also, please go listen to Fables of the Folk, our 5e Fey Wild Sealy Code escapade that is going on. Purna, the DM, has done an amazing. Suddenly, the Bihari in me came out. Has done an amazing job. Anurag, the second best host, has also done the Purjavas plays.
You want to see
well as
me,
other,
go complete Deadpool on the enemies? You would be finding me over there.
Oh yeah. So until the next time, may all your rolls be great.